quarterback play the Dolphins have received thus far this season has been generally, awful. We're going to explore why and who's the most to blame here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. You're on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL draft lead for the 3013. We will be putting that to great use in the weeks and months ahead here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate those everydayers who do tune in. You can find all of our shows here on the Locked On Network on YouTube or wherever you list your favorite podcasts. So we don't just say it, we live it. It is your team every day, including on a Monday afternoon after a brutal loss the Dolphins suffered at the hands of the Indianapolis Colts to fall to 2-4 on the season, in which you experienced yet another joyous experience of not the same quarterback starting the game as the one who finishes the game for you. And it showed down the stretch in that game against the Colts. Just the little things that Tyler Huntley, they've been working really hard to get ironed out. The little things showed up on more than one occasion for the timing of both your pass and your run schemes down the stretch against the Colts. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. You place your first $5 bet and get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today on the show, the backup quarterback experience, and many of you asked about it in the preseason. And I gave the old Tom Moore adage, if your starter goes down, you're kind of screwed either way. And we don't practice being screwed either way. Well, they are screwed. They have been screwed, and they may no longer be screwed at the quarterback position if Tua Tagovailoa does indeed return. But many of you asked about the backup plan at quarterback with Mike White and Skylar Thompson and the preseason battle that Skylar Thompson wins. And now you've kind of gone through a churn of all these other players at the quarterback position already. But that plan as a whole, and the performance that you've got for how badly it has been. A lot of people want to be mad at the quarterbacks themselves, the backup quarterbacks, and say, well, they're not NFL roster caliber players. A lot of people want to be mad at the general manager. Some people want to be mad at the head coach. Seems like the least amount of negative energy that exists out there is for Mike McDaniel, because it's, well, you did say, Kyle, you yourself said, if your starter goes down, the team would be screwed, and you don't practice being screwed. And that's true. And I think that's one thing that I would say about any and all observations around the football team right now. Strengths, weaknesses, pros, cons, people to be mad at, people to be frustrated about, people to not be mad at. Multiple things can be true. I'm a print t-shirts at this point. Multiple things can be true. So yesterday, I made a comment on social media on X at Running Tape, and kind of got into the biggest issue that I had with the passing game, which was you don't have routine drop back concepts to create pitch and catch opportunities to get your best players the football. And that, of course, is on the heels of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle touching the ball, 3 times, as many times as Alec Ingold did in an entire football game. And people are like, yo, you're the one who sat here and asked for them to run the ball and pound the rock 40 times. And yes, I did. The observation around the passing game is not exclusive to just the game against Indianapolis. We got a 4.5 game sample size, effectively, of backup quarterback play in Miami. And it's one of the problems that exists. And with the passing game, it's the biggest problem that exists. Now, the quality of the quarterbacks is bad too. But the play calling for the quarterbacks and what the quarterbacks do well and don't do well, that's a problem too. And the plan that you had from a personnel perspective, that's a problem too. So it's like that. Many things can be true. Many things stacked on top of each other create compounding, disastrous results. And it's not like the Dolphins are just below average with their offense and their passing game. They have 3 passing touchdowns on the season. 3 passing touchdowns. I'll say it again. 3 passing touchdowns on the season. Tyler Huntley threw the first one since week 2, the first quarter against the Bills. It's how long it's been since you've had a passing touchdown. Yeah, I think that speaks for itself. But I want to start the focus here with the plan that existed. People that I think the three most culpable hands that are to be had in this situation for the Dolphins is the general manager, the head coach, and the players themselves. I want to spotlight Chris Grier first. And this is kind of where I'm at with Chris. I have largely been a proponent of the job that Chris has done. I think more often than not, the process has been better than the results. But you can only do that for so long, right? And I get the process of having a quarterback going into a second contract and teams across the league, you don't really pay for that kind of player. Chris did the thing that Chris likes to do, and Chris has generally done. And he trusted his coach, and he deferred to his coach. And that goes all the way back to Tim Boyle, or that extends all the way down to Tim Boyle. Because when the Dolphins did their roster cuts, Chris Grier had his end of preseason press conference at the beginning of the season. And they had just cut Mike White. It was Skyler, and it was Tua Tagovailoa. And they didn't have a third quarterback in line. And he was asked in the press conference, do you have a practice squad quarterback lined up? Yes, we do. Tim Boyle. Okay, this was the first anybody knew that Tim Boyle was going to be a Miami Dolphin. The follow-up question, what did the staff like about him? The very first sentence out of Chris's mouth, Mike McDaniel liked him. Mike and Daryl Bevell, spent a lot of time watching a lot of the quarterbacks, and he caught their eye. Obviously, he was in Houston, little similar scheme. And obviously with the Jets, we saw him before. He's got some background in our offense, just watching him. Mike and Bev felt really good about adding him to the practice squad for his skill set and what he can do. Veteran guy that's been around, has a good reputation, good locker room guy, smart. We're excited to add him. Okay. Chosen by Mike McDaniel. Now, this does not absolve Chris, because Chris's biggest problem at this stage is he has been so accommodating to his coaches and exactly how they want to build a team and what they want to do. Like, I don't think Chris, his identity for a football team and team building structure, I think it would be fair to say, has just to be collaborative. Executive gets a shopping list from the coach. Let's shop for the groceries on the recipe that you want to make. And that's a good thing. It is a good thing. But is it too much of a good thing? And if you're going to have an honest conversation, and if you really like Tyler Huntley, which you did, because you eventually added Tyler Huntley was available for trade before the season started. Could you have gone out and acquired him via trade? Could you have added him when he first hit the available market so that he was not brought in 2 weeks into the season on the Tuesday going into week 3? Extra 2 weeks. I mean, he might have been able to start against, might have been able to start against Seattle if he was here for the start of the season. I don't think that makes you feel a whole lot better. But at this stage, Chris's hands are on every piece of this roster. And I think the error that Chris had was as a team that put themselves in a position to have finite resources. And some of that tampering, not on Chris, but some of the aggressive roster moves that they made and the contracts that came as a part of that. A lot of this was the path that you chose for yourself. And in this choose your own adventure, you get far enough down the pathway and there's, if it isn't the consequences of my actions. And the consequences of the actions for Miami for having limited draft capital for a 2-year stretch that included 1 pick in the first 2 rounds, limited like day 3 capital, right? On top of deferring to your coach and his evaluations in this capacity, you've rubber stamped everything. And that's where the responsibility, I think, falls for Chris Grier. Now, what about Mike McDaniel himself? And this is where you can get into the schematic stuff and people want to argue with me about, well, you told them to run the ball and they ran the ball and they still lost the game. Mike didn't fumble the ball. Like, all that's true. But I think one of the big core issues with Mike that we have seen this season, we're going to get into next. as far as his hand in the quarterback situation and the play that the Dolphins have received and who's to blame for why it is so bad. That's next. Stick with us. NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return over on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. That's where you place your bets. Actually, right over here on my other screen, I have the lines for week 8. We're halfway there, gang. And the Dolphins are favored at home by 3.5 points after the report that came out this past week as it pertains to, or weekend, Tua planning to return to practice this week. It seems that was enough for FanDuel to get this game up on the board. Do you like Dolphins minus 3.5? Do you like the Cardinals money line at plus 154? If you don't think Tua is going to fix everything, you can make those choices for yourself. You could also get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users do not visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you are looking in the wrong place. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Mike. Let's talk about Mike. Mike's hand is, I think, one of the big sins that's been committed with this situation, which is you have to internally get your in-house evaluations right. And for Miami to have spent 2.5 years with Skylar Thompson, work hands-on with him, have him in the system, to groom him, to mold him, to be the first impression that he has as an NFL quarterback, and to go through a training camp battle that you retrospectively look back at, and nobody took control of it until the second half of the third preseason game, really, is when somebody stepped up for the first time amongst the backup quarterbacks. And that includes the practices that were open and available and that I attended. To go through that entire process and say, we're fine. A lot of that shifts the weight and responsibility onto the party that we haven't talked about yet, which is the quarterback himself. But from your perspective as the coach, to have that amount of time on task with Skylar Thompson and to be that off of what it looks like when he gets his chance to play. And I know we got a small sample size of Skylar Thompson, right? I mean, of all the quarterbacks that have played, Skylar at this point is 7 attempts away from having the lowest pass attempts of the quarterback. Tyler Huntley was 66, Tua was 62, Skylar with 33, Tim Boyle at this stage with 26 attempts. I mean, he looked lost. He looked like he didn't know what was happening. And this was your preferred, through the evaluation that you had, player that you put in this spot, that you've worked with and coached for 2 years, 2.5 years. It's a missed evaluation to be that comfortable with that player because you're pulling other guys off the street that didn't spend any time with the team and have no parallel of strengths like Tyler Huntley. And they are running the offense at least better than what Skylar Thompson did. And one of the great white lies that everybody told themselves going back to 2022 was that Skylar Thompson almost beat the Bills in the playoffs. The Dolphins were, in spite of Skylar Thompson, in position to win that football game. And based off the 3 quarters of Skylar Thompson play that we've seen since, he regressed. And that's not to get into the quarterbacks themselves too fast here, but Mike has his hands directly on that decision as the coach responsible for making those evaluations for who is going to get the backup job. And as Chris Grier disclosed, Mike McDaniel put the star next to Tim Boyle's name as the next quarterback that he liked and chose him to be the practice squad quarterback that has now thrown 26 pass attempts on the season. And low-key, Tim Boyle has the second highest success rate and a higher yards per attempt and the second highest adjusted net yards per attempt of any quarterback in the roster, outperforming both Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson. And Tim didn't spend any time in the summer with his football team. And it still hasn't been good. But his QBR is 2.1 out of 100. That's where we're at right now from a quarterback play perspective. And that's the best option you have out of your backup quarterbacks. This should have been sniffed out that there was no ceiling with the players that you had. Even if you were going to go cheap, you could have gone cheap with Tyler Huntley and been proactive to go that route, or you could lean into Tyler Huntley's performance and strengths more. How many design quarterback runs have we seen in 3 starts for Tyler Huntley? 4? 3? Do you count the one draw he had against Tennessee? Genuine question. How many design quarterback runs? And what are Tyler Huntley's strengths? And what did Mike McDaniel tell us during the bye week? Well, Tyler's never run no-hitch in-breakers before, so he was really infectious in the bye week to get those reps. Then why are we running this kind of stuff? That's where it goes to play structure and how you're choosing to put your players in position. And it really feels like the offense during this stretch has been, well, everybody needs the reps together for what we want it to be and what it's going to look like when Tua gets back. So we really just need to stick somebody in there and get enough reps and do the basic version of it as possible, instead of authentically saying and doing like what Matt LaFleur did in Green Bay and said, oh, I've got Jordan Rodgers, and now I have Malik Willis. And, oh, Malik's good at this, but he's not good at this. Let's lean all the way into this for the next couple of weeks, and then we'll come back when we get our starting quarterback back and do the other stuff again. How many times have we seen the San Francisco 49ers go to backup quarterbacks? Brock Purdy was a backup quarterback once upon a time. The only quarterback that didn't work with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco was the guy who they spent all the draft picks in Miami to trade for, Trey Lance. Jimmy, CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins, all of these guys have come in and thrown for like 300 yards as like career backup quarterbacks that don't have a lot of appealing traits, but they get into this system and they execute it well. And I think you look at what Miami hasn't done with those opportunities this season, and it's like, well, we tailored it for Tua. It's still, the system's a system. You guys just got to figure out how to run it. Is that good coaching? I don't think so. So you have misevaluation of your talent in the process. And then what your approach has been from a pass game standpoint to try to bridge yourself until the return of your starting quarterback, I think has done a disservice to every guy that has stepped out on the field. Including one in Skylar Thompson, who did not look like he belonged on an NFL field. Tim Boyle and Tyler Huntley at least have redeeming qualities. Tim Boyle is the low ceiling, low floor, but doesn't look so overwhelmed that he doesn't know what's happening. That was Skylar was sacked on 15% of his dropbacks in 3 quarters. Brutal. Let's talk more about those quarterbacks, including the one we haven't really discussed here thus far and mentioned all that much, your starter, and the weight of responsibility that he carries for all of this here today on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. I will be at the game on Sunday against Cardinals. And if you're going to be there, or if you want to be there, the event that Tua returns, speaking of Tua Tagovailoa, you can get your tickets courtesy of GameTime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime, the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind With your purchase, you can filter only incredible deals with great seats with GameTime picks. You can see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy. All-in pricing you can toggle on and see the total cost up front. No surprises when you put the tickets into your cart, and you can buy tickets in just seconds with a few taps on your phone. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. I think amongst everything else, you did not put yourself in a position to have highly competitive backup quarterbacks, right? And some of that is by design. I wonder if you didn't fart around until August to get the contract done with your starter, would that have had you in a better position to invest in a different player? I know the team and the heels of the Flores stuff and rehabbing Tua and his self-confidence and self-efficacy and like all that stuff, it really does matter. And you know, I don't want to just blow smoke over this because Dolphins aren't having success right now. Like that stuff does matter. I feel like it impacts Tua. It has impacted Tua more than it does a lot of other players. And you could choose to sit on whatever side of the fence you want to as a fan and a believer in if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like you have your right to feel however you feel about that. But I would say that is certainly something that the team, I think it is very apparent, has been sensitive to. And I know Omar Kelly's talked a lot about like they haven't brought in legitimate competition for Tua in years, like the entirety of the Mike McDaniel era. And I don't think that's a coincidence as a part of the rehabbing the investment that you have in Tua and Tua as a player to get the best version of him to see if it's going to work or not. I wonder if that contract is done sooner, does that put you in a position to then go acquire a player via trade, via free agency, via the draft, whatever, to give yourself a little bit of a better insurance policy without the contract's not done, look over the shoulder type of vibe. We'll never know. But these are the kinds of things you sit here and you think back to different chapters of the offseason and the path that the team took. And I can't help but wonder. But then you got to August and your head coach and your general manager, allegedly, at least your head coach, went up to the owner's office and pounded the table for this thing to get done. Pounded the table for it to get done. And it got done. And at that point, whether it was a wise decision or an unwise decision, your head coach and your executive that runs your football team, they put their trust in you as the quarterback of the franchise. It's the biggest investment we'll ever make. And we're investing it in you. We are entrusting ourselves and our team and our well-being into you. And with that comes a load of responsibility. And among those responsibilities, heavy as the crown, as was said, part of wearing that crown is ensuring that you are there to make decisions. And Tua did not. There is very little justifiable, and I understand it's a routine football play, but you are one of the smaller quarterbacks in the NFL with an extended history of avoidable injuries, who just spent the entirety of your last year proving that you could stay healthy by making selective decisions on avoiding contact and protecting yourself within the pocket. I cannot emphasize enough the amount of blame that, as I assess where this team is at right now, a significant portion of the responsibility of the mess that this team is in goes back to that decision on a fourth down scramble against the Bills in week 2. Because if you're judicious there, we don't see Skylar Thompson. We don't see Tim Boyle. And we don't see Tyler Huntley. We see you. But that's not what happened. And the responsibility of that, particularly that, and protecting yourself. You think about hear Tom Brady talk about the way that he played the game and protecting his receivers, that extends to you as a player yourself as well. And I've seen the play a dozen times. Whether you were going to get the first down or not, you didn't have to go into a body. You had 5 yards of space to your left. Never mind the fact you did have the first down. Go to your left, get down, act like the franchise quarterback the team entrusted you to be. Don't take the hit. Live to play another down, live to play another game. And instead, you had an IR stint in which, and that doesn't take away, like, the responsibility of that does not absolve the decisions of those elsewhere in the organization who made these decisions to put that responsibility into his hands. Again, multiple things can be true. But the path that this team to get to this point, you could say, well, they had limited resources. Well, Mike missed on the evaluation of his backup quarterback. The most avoidable thing that you've had on the entire stretch is don't try to run over Damar Hamlin. Is the most avoidable thing. And I've said it once, I will continue to say it. You knew what the risks were in investing into Tua Tagovailoa on a big contract and making him the face of the franchise for another extended period of time, but with exponentially more money attached to it. But based off how he played last year, you trusted him to make the decisions to protect himself. And that went out the window. So everybody has a hand to blame here. I can't blame Tyler Huntley too much about being a quarterback whose best trait is his athleticism, and you don't really call a lot of quarterback runs or rollouts. Did I think Tyler Huntley played well against the Colts? No. I thought he ran into a bunch of pressure. He looked uncomfortable trying to stand in the pocket and rip these throws. But then again, I go back to, well, what does he do well, and is he being asked to do that? And I don't think the answer is yes. Do I think Tim Boyle had a good throw and putting a never-in-history ball out of bounds on the last play of the game on 4th and game? No, I do not. But being the guy that wasn't prepped to play this entire time, coming in off the bench, I understand the circumstances there. And it's a hard spot to be in as the technically third-string quarterback who's kind of the de facto fourth-string quarterback, but not the fourth-string quarterback. You've had 4 quarterbacks that have played significant snaps for you. It's been 6 games. It's tough. Everybody's got a hand in it. And while we don't know what the rest of body of work is going to look like to be able to make firm, sound, well-educated judgments on what the ramifications of this mess should be, we are ideally at the end of the sample size of this current mess. And what we know is you went 1-3. And now you're waking up on a Monday or you're waking up on a Tuesday, depending on when you watch the show. And you're 2-4 as a football team. Your season's not over, but it's effectively over. The AFC's a mess. Maybe you get hot. I'll be rooting for them to win every game, but I also understand there are fundamental core issues at a lot of levels here that have been exposed beyond the cracks at the surface. And maybe we should be thankful for that. But we will allow the rest of this process to continue to play out week by week and continue to explore these things as we're able to, as we continue to glean more and more clarity on the final trajectory of the 2024 season. That's going to do it for us here today on the show. I hope you guys enjoyed this look at the quarterback play the Dolphins have received, the blame that is to go around. Lots more coming here this week. Hope you keep it plugged in here on Locked On Dolphins. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you list your favorite podcasts. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I'm out of here.